Vicarious.
To listening to every little sound because you want to hear, a monkey in the distance, the abundance of life there with the jungle. Like, it just feels more alive. Like, you feel more alive. We're all part of, like, something bigger than ourselves, I think.
Hello, aloha, namaste. Welcome to Vicarious Diaries. I'm Jeffosaurus Rex, your host. This travel podcast is all about journeys abroad and journeys within. As we share stories about our wonderful adventures, the most impactful stories tend to be the ones that follow us home. The moments that gave us new perspectives. New inspiration. Not everyone has the luxury of traveling this beautiful planet, so we will be the conduits and bring culture and creativity to you. Today's explorer for the inaugural episode, I interviewed my friend Glen from Australia. Glen and I met in Spain while I was couch surfing and he was volunteering through Workaway. Glen is a world traveler who's explored over 30 countries, as well as teaching English in Vietnam and South Korea. He currently lives in Australia, where he teaches English online with a company called Cambly. As for travel, one of the main themes that shines for Glen is how people are more similar than different, which is probably something we could do well to remind ourselves of. Today, we open up Glen's backpack that's full of adventures and self-awareness through the Amazon jungle, Bolivia, Chile, and Colombia. Hope you enjoy the flight.
You remember me?
Of course. How could I forget? Do I remember you? Yeah, of course. Nice little map of the world in the background there.
Yeah, I just put it up.
I see you're sailing. You're sailing towards Australia there with a balloon. Thanks.
Yeah, my friend went to New Zealand, so I brought this map to a presentation I did, and I wanted people to draw on it and just places they've been in the world and some sort of art I can bring home with me. But you're the first person that's like completely followed through with your like, I'm ready to go. So that's really cool.
Well, I figure, yeah, look, I figure there's plenty of other people who are more qualified for you to be talking to, like, because, whenever I hear a podcast or listen to people talk on YouTube, they're obviously, like, intelligent people, well, most of the time. If you're going to sit down and listen to someone for any length of period of time, because, I couldn't sit down and watch, like, a reality television show that was just, like, complete garbage for an hour. So I just sit down and listen to podcasts. So, but I thought, like, if there's nothing that much that I can give from being intelligent, but you're asking me anyway, I'll just try to give my wisdom that I've got from like traveling and whatever. And yeah, I think what you're doing is like a really good thing, trying to sort of bring people together with stories of traveling and just sharing ideas and just being nice people. Yeah, it seems like that's what you're trying to get at anyway.
Yeah, exactly. I basically I just learned from traveling that it was difficult for me to share my journey with people like in such short encounters where we'd be like playing pool or something, and like for me to just they're like, oh, I heard you went to Europe, like how was your trip? And there's just so much that happened that it was difficult to like just tell them in that setting, like just to throw a bomb on them, like of all this inspiration that I got. And, I got a few opportunities to speak at our library, mostly to like people in their 60s and 70s. And I took that opportunity and recorded it. And I just felt like, I wanted to speak to other people who have done journeys and give them the opportunity to share what they've learned and like share places they've gone, because, there is so many places in the world. Like I'm not going to get to all of them. So I can try and live through other people's experiences. And
that's true. Yeah. And like, I can understand how it's hard to like tell people what it's like. Cause a lot of people say they want to travel, but maybe they don't know why, or they're just too scared, or they say, "Oh, I'd really love to be doing what you're doing," but I sort of think, well, you can, but obviously they're tied down by something. But yeah, trying to explain what it was like exactly. It might just be the feeling that you get when you're walking down a street that you've never been on before, and there's like sort of a wind going through your hair, and you're whistling a happy tune. It's kind of like you just feel free, and like you don't know what's around the corner. So
Right, yeah. So
yeah.
it usually was just like kind of quick stories, and like when the podcast, like I like podcasts too, and that's why I feel like this is a great way of letting people give their stories.
How was it teaching? Not teaching, just talking to the old people, like old. I shouldn't say old, younger than my parents. Because I guess traveling or the experiences that they have, all the stuff that we've done traveling, the meaning of it changes as we get older. Like maybe we think about it differently in the context of our lives.
Yeah, it was really strange because I wasn't expecting such a older audience. So I really had like all I had planned was I was like going to talk about like how to get through those constraints, like you said, like those ties, and like how to like face fear, and like all these like how to accomplish your goals. But like I'm talking to like 80 and 90-year-olds, and I'm like, okay, maybe I should change it a little bit more of, maybe the places I saw, and like what the food was like, and maybe some more stuff like that. But I feel like I did a good combination of it, which was nice. And I loved it. I felt, I was pretty nervous to speak in front of a group. I've never done that before, but it was really natural, and yeah, it went really well. And you can relate to that too, because I saw that you've done comedy before. So
yeah, I thought you were going to bring that up. Yeah. Yeah, like I said, what I wrote you, I'd done it like 7 times before, but I felt like I wasn't going to get back into it unless I was like, I'd gotten rid of the nerves. But that's sort of just really an excuse, because anyone will tell you that the only way to get rid of it is to just keep doing it again and again. But I guess it just wasn't, what I wanted to continue doing at the time. It might be something that I do in the future, but it's probably more like writing that I'm more interested in doing. So, but yeah, as I said, what I wrote you, if maybe I'd be more inclined to do it now, or more confident, because I've at least had a year of experience talking to groups of people, albeit young kids. But you get to act like a bit of a goofball sometimes, just to make them laugh and make them relax and realize it's not all about study. So yeah, and obviously teaching English to kids who don't understand English, you sort of see how much comedy relies on body language and gestures and stuff, not just what you're saying. So yeah, but maybe I'll do it again in the future. But for now, it's not on my radar.
Yeah, I like what you said. You felt like you were gonna wait until you felt more confident, but you said that was just an excuse. But also it wasn't necessarily what you wanted to dive into anyway. But it's cool that you recognize that, and the fact that you did it anyway. So because stand-up comedy, that's like that's got to be. How did you get into that? Like,
well, I mean, at the time that I did it, I thought that I was ready. But then you quickly find out that the first time that I did it was actually in front of like the biggest crowd that I had, because it was part of the Melbourne International Comedy Festival. Has like a forget the name of it, but it's like where all the newcomers can sign up and have a go. So it's a big festival, because like a lot of people sign up, and then the winner gets like a contract to go to Edinburgh or something. Yeah, unless you've actually sort of waded into the waters a bit first and gotten some confidence up, I would reckon that would be the way to go, and then actually try to do it. But if you throw yourself right into the deep end, it can be a bit nerve-wracking, or it can be sort of, oh well, I didn't expect this. It might be just like not so much the eyes on you, but it's also the sound of hearing your own voice over speakers for the first time. It's it's hard to explain. Like one thing that people say that they would never do because they're like too afraid, public speaking and try to make people laugh. But yeah, it's probably one of those things where it's like if you've got an itch to scratch, then go for it. Try it at least once. At least I can say that I've had the experience of what it's like to have people looking at me and feeling nervous because I'm trying to make them laugh. And that's nothing. I mean, it's not necessarily something to be proud of, but I guess a lot of things are less scary after you do that.
So did it go well?
Of the 7, I would say that probably 2 were really good, but that first one, not so much. Yeah, and one I just bombed terribly because I was like trying out new stuff, which sounds ridiculous that like I'd do 7 and try out new material.
Well, good for you.
Yeah, but and then I actually like thought that I'd had it down pat, like I'd rehearsed it like 100 times, but when you you're in that venue, all of a sudden the dynamics are a lot different, and you start to feel the pressure. You know that you're nervous, and you know that they're sensing that you're nervous, and so your mind starts just going around like a pinball, and you can't actually organize your thoughts. So, well, I couldn't anyway, and it was hard to get back on track, and yeah, it went pretty terribly, but that wasn't the last time I did it. I said to myself, that can't be the last time I do it. So the one after that was actually all right, but it was in a much smaller venue. So yeah, I don't know why I kept trying to do these big ones where it's better. It's better to actually start small and then work your way up, I think. But I don't know. Different strokes for different folks.
Yeah, and it's cool to recognize that what talents we do have in life, because I remember I tell this story all the time, but like when I met you and we went on that road trip and we ended up playing these just silly, goofy storytelling games in the car. And I remember you and Deanna, like you were really good at your stories. Like they were very believable. And I could tell that like you were good with words and stuff. So it's cool that like, doing something like comedy, if you have the opportunity to write out, maybe some jokes and stories that you want to tell, because I remember listening to your stories and I was laughing and they were very honest, but at the same time, like just very exaggerated. And I didn't know like if you were telling the truth, but and you wrote in your questionnaire that it's interesting to find out, what you are good at in life and making sure that you're pursuing those things, and because it's going to feel right and be easier.
Yeah. I thought you were going to say it's good to recognize what you have talent at in life. So it's good that you got out of comedy. But no, thank you. Thanks for that compliment. I remember that the aim of that game was sort of like conducive to trying to be, exaggerate things and or take stories that are believable, but maybe put a little bit of sauce on them. So good time. That was a good road trip. I really liked that.
Yeah, it was very, it was cool because I was in Spain and I was on a road trip, and each of us were from a different country, and it was like just such a cool combination. And
yeah. Great. Yeah, so cool because it was probably 30 degrees in the middle of, I think it was supposed to be their winter or maybe coming up to it. And yeah, it was just on that rooftop. I'd do a few exercises in the morning, and then when Deanna came, she sort of got me into a little bit of meditation, and it was a perfect place to do it because it was overlooking, Mijas Pueblo, a really beautiful town, and then you've got Fuengirola and the ocean. So you got this resort town and then the Mediterranean. You got a mountain on the sides and around the back, and on a clear day you could see Morocco. It was just, it was awesome. So
you're from Australia, right? Like you were born there?
That is correct.
Okay, and you've literally been to, I think, about almost 30 countries, right?
Yeah, probably. I've got a little cue card here that I've listed all the countries that I've been to, and it's up to 33. That's if you include the Vatican City and Monaco. So yeah, I've been to a few places. Most of those places, like when I traveled Europe, I was only there for 2 or 3 days in each place. Like I was doing I think it's called Bus About. I don't know if that company is still going, but yeah, that was a lot of fun. But yeah, so not a lot of time to really soak in the cultural experience and really appreciate the countries. But I mean, I did, but yeah, not in a way where it sort of got under my skin. But yeah, like I love traveling, and I've lived in Canada, I've lived in London and Edinburgh, and now South Korea. So yeah, a few places.
And that's definitely important too, to actually soak in the cultures, to spend, some decent time in places. And like you said, you've actually lived in some different countries, which is super beneficial and brings so much creativity to your life. And but it's also important, just to wander and stuff like that. But my first question is just, how did you get into traveling then? Like, was there a first trip, like maybe when you're much younger, or trips you went on with your family that first travel bug that got in you?
Yeah, Australia's a big country, and there's a lot of open space. So I guess, being a family of 5 boys, mum and dad wanted to sort of show us around a little bit. So that probably did inflame my interest a little bit. But it wasn't until I was 24 that I ended up going to London, and that was really because my 2 best friends were sort of, going over there to find work and wanted to do the whole working holiday thing, and the start of like a lot of really good adventures.
Okay, cool. So you lived in London for how long, and tell me about that.
Yeah, man, it's a while ago. Yeah, that was for 9 months, and yeah, it was like, I was 24. It was my first time overseas, so doing that Europe bus about trip that I spoke about before, I'd met a couple of friends along the way, because a lot of people do that Europe trip and then they go to live in London. I remember there was one time I was on a bus with some girl, and she was from Texas, and this is gonna sound like stereotypical, like Texas, I guess, but it's not meant to. I know there's a lot of lovely people from all parts of the US. But we were on a bus, and she was just telling me on this, it wasn't exactly crowded, it was late at night, but she said that she thinks that the US should just bomb all of the Middle East. And I was just like, you can't say that. And she's like, oh no. I said, why do you say that? And she's like, because they don't like to blow shit up. I just thought it was like, yeah. So I was just trying to, I don't know. I was, it's almost like, I mean, she can be completely friendly and lovely up to that point, and then saying something like that, it wasn't going to make me get off my seat and walk away. I mean, she still seemed like a lovely person that was just completely ignorant.
The interesting thing about that is, before you say anything else, is I met a girl from Hawaii. So she lived in Hawaii for maybe, I forget, like she grew up in Hawaii and then she came to the mainland, and she was telling me that just the things that she started learning when she came to the mainland about the history of the States and all these things that she didn't learn in her school in Hawaii that maybe had made her a much more ignorant about a lot of things in life. It's just so interesting because there are so many different states, and I think the schooling systems are really different. So, it's a mix of emotions and opinions that cause those kind of thoughts. And there's a lot of the earth is a complex system and place that it's you got to be open-minded and be willing to learn throughout your life and continually learn and always be a student in life and until you come to
Yeah, I mean, we all have different journeys, and we all have interesting stories because we're all trying to we might be from different places, but we're all trying to get the same sort of thing. We're trying to find a connection with a group, have some sort of responsibility and feel we have a purpose and we're worthy of love and we're, all that sort of stuff. It's just that it gets channeled by the way that we think, which is sort of due to cultural conditioning most of the time. And the sort of friends that you have, it gets sort of like funneled into some weird views. I mean, again, weird is like a subjective thing where it's like what I think is weird to some would be normal to other people, and vice versa. But yeah, a lot of the sort of stuff that we look at as laziness is, it's hard to fault too many people for that as well, because it's like they didn't wake up one day thinking I want to be lazy. It's kind of like an incremental thing that like happened from birth, whether it's partly genetics or parents or friends or your culture. We all get sort of led down a different way, and sort of it's probably more important to just sort of recognize that and have compassion for people. But in the same token, yeah, you've got to have some sort of personal responsibility as well, and you can't just let people, be lazy. It'll just turn to greed and, I guess apathy, for all things that, I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm just rambling now. No. You get what I'm saying.
Yeah. Because it's just like my friend, especially when it's family. Whereas like, I've met people who I live in near Toronto in Canada, and it's like I've met people who have never left our province and who are like in their 70s and 80s. And, like some people obviously like maybe they grew up and they weren't as fortunate to be able to do those types of travels. But also, as you get older, you get a little bit jaded and you don't want to, change your habits and stuff. But I have friends who told me like some of their family, live in the mountains or something, and they have had that way of life for so long that when you bring those new ideas to them, it's so difficult for them to open their minds to it. And I remember reading a quote that I really liked. It just said, be open to everything and opposed to nothing. And of course, like have some limits, but at least just have an open mind, and don't put a stop sign up right away when you hear something that's weird or bizarre. At least just like you said, when what you wrote, you said at least hear the person out. Like where are they coming from? And I think that's important because everyone grows up with different cultural things that have been put on us, and that's kind of their way of life, and you have to each their own, right? Yeah. Traveling sort of helps with that because you're constantly coming into, you've got new stimulus and new people to meet, and you've got to have your guard up a little bit, but then you realize, there was maybe nothing to worry about, or, once you get comfortable, you want to move on to the next place. But if you stay in the same town, and I've met people who lived in the same town who are just really nice people. Yeah, there's just a higher percentage, or I guess, or higher. It's more conducive to producing people who are a little bit jaded or not as accepting of different views. Because I guess if you want to challenge the way someone thinks about something, that's going to be uncomfortable for them if they've like had that belief for so long. It's like it challenges their whole way of living, I guess, or the whole meaning of their life. Maybe they thought the world was supposed to be one way, but it's changing in a way that they don't like. And I can see how that's like a natural human thing where it's like, in youth, you're really excited, genuinely excited about life. And there's this adrenaline because it's like, well, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And then maybe life gets in the way in some way or another, and people become a bit jaded, a bit cynical because like it changed in a way that they weren't ready to cope with. But yeah, I think travel sort of helps you be a bit more, flexible and adaptable to change because you're constantly coming into contact with it. You see that that's basically the only constant that there is, which it's a bit of a cliche, but it's true. Yeah. I mean, you've got people who live in the same place who, I mean, they might be narrow-minded about certain things, but it doesn't really get in the way of anyone because they've got their circle of friends, they've got their jobs or whatever, and
they're nice people to new people that are coming through town or whatever. They don't really have to challenge any existing beliefs. But when it comes to things like talking about something that's happening on a world stage, or people who are just getting fed the news from, the nightly news on TV, where it's basically more just about entertainment, or it's produced in a way and handed out to you in a way that sort of, it's all a bit like clickbait, I guess. It's not necessarily stuff that's well sourced, or maybe they've got some sort of agenda, And even when you thought you could rely on some sources on the internet, now I'm sort of like, I don't know who to believe. We're sort of living in crazy times at the moment in regard to that. But yeah, like, I just don't like it when I'll sit down at a dinner table somewhere and, someone's heard something off the nightly news or read some little snippet of something in the paper, and that's enough to base their whole opinion of what to do with a whole race of people or a whole problem, because, actually this is the problem, because I saw some politicians say it, and basically it's usually just some politician that they like because, it looks like them, or they like the way they talk, or they like their hairstyle, or whatever the hell it is, Yeah, try to be a bit more sort of, objective, or have multiple sources for your information, I think is a good way to go.
I think the fear of the unknown, and I think that's what's really cool about traveling is, you start, like you said, you start with a guard up a little bit, and then as soon as you let that guard down and you trust yourself and trust the world that everything's going to be okay, and all these great changes start taking place that, maybe some of them you knew were possible, and then you have these crazy things happening that you didn't even know were possible, that were the unknown, and now you're recognizing, just like when you did comedy, like you never really thought you could do that, and then look at you're on stage, it's actually happening. And I think that's cool with traveling, is that's how your mind will become open. And whereas if you're not doing new things in life, then you are, like you said, you're in a routine, and you are seeing something on TV, and it's like it's fitting perfectly in the way of your life because you're so used to that and you're not open to change. But yeah, change and growth is huge for me. And travelers, I mean, they're looking for change.
Yeah. And I think what you said about the fear of the unknown, yeah, it's sort of like when people say, about certain dangerous animals in the wild, it's sort of like they're more afraid of you than you are of them. Yeah, it's kind of like when you do meet people, you realize that, well, you're the traveler, so it's quite understandable that they should be more worried about you. They're quite happy in their lives. Maybe they don't want things to change at all. So you probably don't have to go into a lot of places really worrying. I mean, you obviously have to know that you're not going into a war zone or anything, like me and my friend almost did. Well, we thought later on that, because I wrote that down, that we were in Kosovo.
Yeah,
Serbia.
Serbia. Yeah,
My friend and I, when we took a train.
Why don't you tell that story?
Yeah, sure. Sorry, I probably was like making another point, but then yeah, don't be so afraid to travel. Maybe is like one of the points I was getting at. But yeah, you got to have your guard up a little bit, understandably. But
that's interesting, like not to be afraid of that, because you're the one who's like bringing change to them in a way. But if you just be yourself and be respectful, then you shouldn't fear traveling, because yeah.
Well, also like the place that you're in might look completely different from any other place that you've been, but once you get to know people a little bit, you realize that we're way more alike than we are different, and any sort of preconceptions that you had about the way they are, really, most people are quite nice, and if they're letting you into their home, they're lovely people. You meet a lot of people like that as you're traveling, or maybe you have to do some couch surfing or work away or whatever. And yeah, they still have to prepare dinner and get ready for work, and it's like, oh, I know people just like this. It's like it's It's just people, getting by, everywhere in life, even if it's somewhere where it's like poverty stricken. I'm sure there's,
they provide for their families and they want to be loved like you were talking about. But yeah, so why don't you tell your Serbia story?
My friend and I, we were in Austria, and this was right before the start of my bus about trip. I needed to get to Greece. I needed to go to Athens, which was where the starting point was for this Greek sailing trip or island hopper trip, where you took a ferry to 4 different islands for 2 days each. Yeah, so we got a train, and the train went through Austria and then Hungary and then Serbia. And, it was mostly just cornfields and houses that had been destroyed and were being rebuilt. You very rarely saw people, maybe a couple of kids kicking a soccer ball around. And, we got to the border of Serbia and Macedonia, and this guard came on and took our passports, and he looked in them and said, "Australia." And we were like, "Yeah." And he said, "Visa." And we were like, "Oh no, we're just going straight through. We're not actually stopping in Macedonia. We're going straight through to Greece." And they weren't having any of that, so they said off. And as it turns out, Americans and Australians were the only ones at that time who needed visas to go through Macedonia. And I'm not sure if that's changed now. But yeah, we were really worried, because it was just like about 2 or 3 cement shacks in the middle of nowhere, just nothing but cornfields around, and these big greasy guys with their shirts undone and didn't speak a lick of English or very much at all, with like big guns, and they didn't look happy to see us, like we inconveniencing them with paperwork or something. So like, this is the perfect place to get rid of like 2 Aussie backpackers. Just like, let the train go. We've got their passports. We could just do what we want with these guys. I probably sound like I'm being a bit dramatic there, but yeah, at the time it wasn't very fun. And I was happy when the guy said, "You've got to get back on a train and go 12 hours back to Belgrade." It was going to be a major inconvenience, but I was happy just that they weren't going to do anything else to us. So that's what we did. And on the way back, we sort of opened up our Europe on a shoestring book and found out that we were in Kosovo, where there'd just been a war. And I said Australians are not advised to go through this area. I wasn't going to make it to my sailing trip on time. So we just stayed at the airport, and I got the flight out the next morning. But when we stayed at the airport, these 2 guys invited us into their office just to have whiskey with them in their office in the airport. And I just thought that was so nice. And I just thought you could never do this in a lot of other places. Like, I was thinking mostly Australia. And they couldn't believe that we weren't allowed to get through. They were like, political, or it's ridiculous. If you're ever in town again in Serbia, in Belgrade, you can come and stay with us. So they just seemed like really nice people. And at that point, I was thinking that most people in Serbia must be really mean, because just from what we'd experienced 12 hours before. But yeah, made it to Athens just in time, and went on the Greek sailing trip. Yeah,
I think that's a lesson in itself. A little bit, maybe to do a tiny bit of research to the countries that you are going to. I mean, it depends. Like, when I went on my trip, some of the historical places I went to, I almost wish like I had learned more about them before I went there to appreciate it more. But when I went, like, I was like, I just want to be completely fresh. I don't want to know anything. Like, I'm just going to go to this country. But sometimes I think I see people who are like planning out a little bit of their trip and like, I do want to check out this place, and maybe a place that makes sure your nationality is allowed to go into that country. But
yeah. Oh, and in Hungary, I didn't actually get to step off the train to go onto the platform in Budapest. So I just stuck my hand out and touched a tree as it went past. Like, I touched a leaf of a tree. So I could say that I'd sort of touched land in Hungary, and that's all I've experienced of Hungary.
When I read that, I had a pretty big laugh, because it was just like, it was just such a strange thing to write, but I was like, that actually sounds cool. Like, cause it's like, oh, I reached out and like touched, like from the moving train or whatever. And, wanted to ask, you went on this South America trip, and that really intrigued me because I've never been to South America and I haven't met too many people who have done extensive South American trips. And what brought you to South America?
Oh man, it's funny. Like, to be honest, I think it was just like I was sick of working where I was and just decided I wanted to travel. So yeah, that's weird that like I can't actually recall the time where I thought, right, South America. Maybe it was just that like it was another place I hadn't been, and it seemed like a little bit dangerous, and I'm sure in a lot of parts it's extremely dangerous, but like, you know, I knew that it was like well traveled enough from other travelers and that I could like meet some cool people, and it was developed enough that I could enjoy traveling there if I was just sensible and use some common sense, that I'd be okay. And yeah, had a great time in South America. People are really, really friendly, and yeah, just I guess there's a lot of like community spirit there, and a lot of like spirituality and stuff as well. So and good weather, great natural scenery, like mountains and beaches and rainforests and jungles and stuff. It's yeah, there's a lot of poverty as well, but it's a lot of beautiful people.
Where's the first country you went to in South America?
Yeah, it was Chile. The first place was Santiago, and then I went up to Valparaiso, which has got a lot of like really interesting graffiti on walls and stuff. Yeah, it's by the water as well, so there's like a little bay. I got on a bus and went up to we talk about like, just going places and not actually doing much research on where you are. I went all the way up Chile, and then stopped at this place, San Pedro de Atacama. And it wasn't until I was actually there that I realized it was the driest desert in the world, San Pedro de Atacama. And it kind of looked like a scene from the Wild West, like just the scenery, like these like old red mountains and, red and white rocks. And we rode about 20 kilometers to this place where it was like salt water that you could actually float in, which is probably quite disgusting, the amount of people that have been in it. But yeah, that was pretty interesting. And then went through to Bolivia.
So before you do Bolivia, because I've never been in a desert, and a lot of people who listen to this, maybe they haven't been in a desert either. I think there is one desert in Canada, but like, what's it like? Because there's a lot of deserts in Australia too, right? Like what's it like going to the desert? Obviously, you mentioned the stars and stuff, but tell me, what's it like going to the driest desert?
It's not like, it was still a town there that was set up, and then the journey from Chile through Bolivia was kind of like being on Mars, I guess. I think there's an area there that's called like Valley of Mars or something. The town itself, just like really hot during the day, and I think quite cool at night. But yeah, dusty streets, and but it's not like a desert where you would step outside and see like all red sand like in Africa, or you're basically looking at mountains, and then you're getting in a jeep, you're going over those mountains and maybe stopping off to go through some tunnels, or see a lagoon with some like pink flamingos. And yeah, it's kind of one of those things where you talk about where it's hard to explain to someone else. Like, it's more the feeling you get when you're there, like the feeling of freedom, and you're in an interesting place. And yeah,
you touched on the feeling that you get while traveling, and I think that's really important, because I remember, it's not necessarily the places you see, and one of the most important is about the people you meet, for sure, and the growth that happens inside you. But sometimes it's just the actual feeling, like you said. Like there's times where I'll be listening to a song, or a song will come on the radio, and it's like this sensory nostalgia, and like I'd like to read up more on it, but you smell something, you smell a dish that you had in one of your travels, and it instantly like transports you right back to that place, and it's amazing, and I love that. And you just close your eyes and you feel like you really feel that memory, which is cool. And you can't really explain that to people.
Yeah, it's amazing. I know what you mean though. I guess they can get that, they can understand that concept though. Yeah, it's funny how vivid it can be when you remember it like that, when you smell it. It's sort of like if you tried to remember it like just consciously, you probably it wouldn't come back as much. But if you get that smell or that sound, it was exactly the same. It's almost like you're transported and all of your senses are back there. Yeah.
And you spent a pretty lengthy time in Bolivia. What was that like?
Yeah, that was pretty cool. Like, yeah, some like beautiful scenery along the way. It does kind of feel like if you could be on Mars, you know, and it'd be really sunny. I guess that's what it would feel like. Plus, you know, lagoons and pink birds.
Didn't you say you had like a mugging story? Like you got mugged in Bolivia or something?
Yeah, me and this girl, but we went to this other bar not far away, and we were like the last ones to leave at like 3 a.m. Yeah, pretty drunk, and I guess we were ripe for the picking. This guy came up to the girl that I was with and sort of started groping her. So I kind of came across and was like, "Hey, dude, hey?" And sort of separated him. And as I was doing that, I feel like a hand down my pocket. I look across and some other guy's got his hand down my right pocket. So I grabbed his wrist, and when I could feel him trying to come back out, I let go of him. And then I sort of look up, and there's three of them standing in front of us. And I've realized that there's nothing in my pocket anymore. He'd like taken it out as I let him out. And then I was just like screaming at them to, you know, fuck off, basically. That's what I said. And get out of here. You got what you want. And the Swedish girl who spoke Spanish actually she was Swiss girl. She was yelling at them, translating them what I was saying, and then they ran away. So I guess that was kind of a happy ending based on the fact that they could have like done us some harm if they wanted to. And it was really annoying that I lost my credit card and some money, but in the whole scheme of things, if you stumble out drunk on the street at 3 a.m. and you're the only one there in a town that you don't know in South America, maybe you could be a little bit more commonsensical than that. So yeah, it wasn't fun, but I guess in the end, I'm not harmed by it. I've learned a lesson, and it's an interesting story to tell. Yeah. But most people, when I tell them that, like they're really surprised because it's like Sucre is like one of the more safe places in Bolivia.
I think that's important too, because you have the opportunity to tell yourself a positive story or a negative story from that, and like how it will affect you. And I've had another friend told me where he got mugged when he was in Turkey, and he, you know, on my trip I didn't have one bad thing really happen to me the entire time. And I think it's important for sometimes that stuff to happen to teach you a lesson, you know, maybe to be more aware if you are out drinking, to be a little bit more responsible, or not out too late in places that you are unfamiliar with. But it seems like you took it quite well, and it didn't really affect much more of your trip, which was good, right? So,
well, I mean, there's no point in, if you know that you're going to be there for a while longer, letting it affect the rest of your trip. But I was pretty annoyed at the time. But yeah, it's interesting that it kind of shines a light, like a beacon, on what it must be like for people there as well. So I end up coming out of those situations kind of thinking, well, they clearly needed that a lot more than I did. You know, it's not like that I would just therefore just give it to them. But that's how you kind of like cope with it a little bit, rationalize it. Why would, you know, because you're asking questions like, why would people do this? But it's like, well, it's obvious. They kind of, you know, grew up in learning it because they thought they had to do that, and probably did. You know, you see little kids get on buses trying to sell candy or whatever it is, at 6 years old, probably trying to just get a bit of extra money so their family can buy rice or whatever. So yeah, if you have a crappy experience like that happen to you, it sort of probably puts everything else that's happening in that place in perspective. You're getting, it's getting in under your skin, as I was saying before, and you're learning more about the place and the way that people have to live, and therefore having a bit more respect for them. That sounds crazy to say you need to get mugged to have respect for people that mug you, but yeah, I mean, respect for their situation, just to help you get by.
Did you go to the salt flats in Bolivia?
Yeah. I've sort of just like past Uyuni, I think on the way to Potosi, which used to be an old mining town. That was pretty cool. I mean, it was just like what you would imagine, just looking out and seeing nothing but like white sand until the horizon. But I mean, there's not many places where you can go to see that. So yeah. And yeah, it was like the people that you meet along the way sort of make it fun and interesting. So yeah.
Nice. It seems like a rare place in the world.
Yeah, I mean, like we spend most of our time like in towns or cities, or even if we've traveled someplace and we see mountains or beaches, we've seen them before. But to go to a place that's just like completely white, it does kind of feel like you're on another planet. And that's a kind of interesting feeling. Like it's more just the fact that you're standing there looking around thinking, this has existed the whole time that I've been alive, and like, I never knew it before. It's kind of cool to come into contact with. When we talk about like traveling and like not being able to describe an experience or a place, like it's a good example there, because like particularly on the ride when I did this other trip there through the jungle, it was like a 3-day jungle trek in Bolivia. So you do like a river, sort of, you have to go along in a boat to the place that you're going to be camping. Yeah, just a kind of, I've never been to Africa, but I'm sure there's parts of Africa where you'd have the same feeling, where it's just like the air and I don't know, just the surroundings, the abundance of life there with the jungle. Like it just feels more alive, like you feel more alive. And yeah, I really loved it. I'd like to go back just to have the same experience, but maybe I could see the Amazon from a different perspective, like from Brazil or somewhere like that. Yeah, before it gets, chopped down and turned into farms and stuff. I don't know. It's pretty sad what's happening, but
that's an amazing answer. You're doing a great job. Because
I don't even remember what the question was.
Because I was gonna say, you're doing so well that I forgot that you were in Korea. And like, I really feel like you're telling me all this stuff about South America. And that's the whole purpose of this podcast or these videos, is to like, bring travel to people. And I really like what you said. And see, I'm learning so much too. The abundance of life. Like, that's such a good way of putting it. Because when I go for a walk in the woods, like and go down to the lake, those are my two favorite nature things to do in my city. I'll walk down to the water and it's just so calm. Like there's nobody there and you can hear the sound of the water. It's ice right now. It's frozen. So you can kind of hear this weird, like as if the ice is starting to crack and things like this. It's really weird sound, but it's so quiet and peaceful there. Or when I go for a walk in the woods and there's so many trees, same thing. There's nobody there and like there's lots of oxygen and it just feels like, yeah, there's life there, but when you go to a place like the rainforest, like there really is an abundance of so many different organisms and animals that you can really feel the energy, and that's why you did say it's like a very spiritual place. So that's really cool. Good story.
Yeah, I mean, you stopped me, man. You just described it even better. Yeah, it is really swarming with life, like with all the trees and the insects and it does feel very calm and quiet, but you're also listening, you're also sort of more attuned to listening to every little sound because you want to hear, you know, a monkey in the distance, and you realize, you know, it does feel, but it's also a jungle too. It's like you know, there's jaguars and wild pigs and stuff. So you've got to keep your wits about you, and but at the same time, it feels calm, and I guess it is, yeah, it's spiritual because you do feel more alive than what you would if you were in a city surrounded by concrete, I believe.
Exactly, yeah. And that's why it is so important to find out what makes you happy and what makes you tick and challenges you in your own city, right? Like taking advantage of what is not that far from you. Maybe you can go on a road trip that's 2 or 3 hours from your place, from your hometown or the city you're living in to something that is going to turn on your brain like that and make you actually use your senses. And you wrote that, this is kind of changing topics, but you wrote that you wanted to learn to be in the moment more. And I've learned, like, I think everyone wants that. Like, that's the most important thing, right? To be in the moment. And I think what I've learned, the best way to do that, obviously, other than getting rid of distractions, is using your senses, like touching things and actually like turning on your ears, like actually actively trying to listen to the tiny sounds, and you will be more in the moment. And it's easy for that to happen when you are in a foreign land, but it's much more difficult when you are at home in your comfort, right, and your routine. But
it's sort of, we probably underestimate how much stuff we miss just by not being attuned to what's happening around us, because we let some ridiculous or mundane thought like go through our brain, and it leads to some sort of needless thought or paranoia or whatever.
To paranoia.
Oh, well, not so much paranoia, but, you know, like some sort of insecurity or something, maybe. Yeah, or just thinking about what should I do for the day, but you know, just procrastinating, you know, or just like turning off our brains because we want to watch something on TV where, like, it might be slightly entertaining, but you'd probably finish it and think, oh, I could have done something more active there. Would have actually got more out of it, you know. And yeah, a big part of like meditation is like doing what you said, like opening up your senses and just like being more in the moment. I'm definitely no expert on it, but I'm pretty sure that's one way to go about it. And people need to do that more if they want to sort of be more productive and feel more energized. Yeah, sort of what you were saying is kind of reminds me of, I don't know who said it, but it was something along the lines of the ability to, or desire to see new places. It's the ability to see places you've already been to with new eyes, with fresh eyes. And
that's a good quote. That's a good quote.
Yeah, you can go to a lot of different places. I mean, that's one way. But you could also sort of be in the same place and have a humdrum sort of boring existence just because of the thoughts that you're having, or you could like choose to look at things differently and, you know, see them with fresh eyes, and that'll probably give you more ideas or more insights, you know. And sometimes that happens, it just happens naturally a lot of the time. But you could consciously do that by just having a more positive attitude and going into a situation and thinking, well, what are the good things that could happen, as opposed to, this is a boring situation that I've been in before.
Something I've noticed is two things about having, I know personally sometimes I have a short attention span, and I think a lot of like maybe the younger generation growing up now is probably even worse. But I remember I used to like, I've always been obsessed with music, and like when those first iPods came out where they had like the album cover, and I'd be flipping through my songs, and occasionally you'd see an album cover that really stood out and you would take a second look at it. But it really dawned on me like how much I was missing. Whereas like if I just took an extra second to really look at the picture, and you're like, wow, because, you know, most artists, musicians will put something special into that album cover for a reason, and it's just like a painting. Like, I don't know how many times, even when you go to the dentist or doctor's office or wherever there, even if you're in a bathroom at a restaurant and there's a painting, and like how mindlessly, like I do this too, you just don't even notice it unless it really stands out for you. But if you just take a second to look at the colors, how does that painting make you feel? Like, what thoughts are coming to mind? And it really does bring new stuff into your life, and it makes you more appreciative of things around you and your surroundings. So
the thing that I find interesting about that is like there is a story behind that painting.
Yeah.
Like a way that whoever was feeling that made him or her write or draw in that way, you know. And the same thing with a song or a quote or whatever. It's like something that you've heard a million times, and you only associate it with how it made you feel a bunch of times. But then you hear a story about how it came about, and you're like, oh wow, yeah, I could see how that would, you know, be that way, you know. And it could be a drug-induced thing that someone had, or it could be like a lifelong love affair, or it could be whatever, you know. And you realize it's a lot more complicated than, you know, you just thinking, oh, that looks nice, you know. And that makes it even more beautiful, I think.
Even my friend said today she just got back from a trip from Ecuador, and I just saw a post she made, and she said she was sitting in like an avocado field or something, and I guess, you know, thinking about how long it takes to grow an avocado tree. And, you know, especially if you're like in Canada or something, like I go to this grocery store and I'm like, oh, I got an avocado. And then like, you know, you eat it and like you eat it in like 2 minutes or 30 seconds or whatever, and it's gone. Whereas like the amount of energy and everything that went into like getting that avocado to you, it's exactly what you're talking about. Or it could be a song, right? Like the amount of emotion, like that could have been someone's whole life, like a relationship or something.
Well, yeah. Supermarket is a perfect example, isn't it? Because I mean, we just walk into it and just look at all these aisles of stuff that's available to us, and we think, oh yeah, I deserve this because I worked, you know, for this amount of money, and I can purchase a $7 block of cheese. Yeah, but you don't really remember, or you don't know, the chain of events that occurred to for it to get on your shelf, including the history of, you know, what it took to make cheese or whatever.
Yeah, when it was just an idea.
As an example.
Like when it was just an idea, and then you got some guy at like the crack of dawn, like milking a cow or whatever. Like.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's good to, again, with the senses. I met a girl. We did a castle tour at, I think it's called Alhambra in Spain, in Granada. You've probably been there. The castle in Granada.
Yeah, no, I walked up the hill and sort of walked around the castle, but I didn't pay the entrance fee to go inside.
Yeah, it's always like that entrance fee, but that one I was so glad that I actually paid for it, because earlier that day the girl was like, oh yeah, I spent this entire day at that castle. I'm like, you spent the entire day there? Like that's insane. But when I went in there, like literally you go in one room and it's just the ceiling, there's these tiny, just, you have to look so like carefully, there's so much detail, it's like, it's unbelievable. But the girl I was with, she just started touching the walls and stuff, and she's just like, I just like touching things, you know. And it's like this childhood thing that we kind of lose. Like when you're a child, you like play with Play-Doh and stuff, and like you lose that as you're an adult. And that sticks out for me on my trip, like the fact that just that moment where she was like touching the castle wall, and I'm like, that's cool, like, because people don't do that anymore. Like we don't even, you know, it's mostly like your eyes.
Yeah, no. Yeah. I notice myself, I'll go for a walk, and then it's like I'll stick my hand out just to feel the texture of a tree or whatever, and it's like I haven't really been consciously thinking to do that, but it's like when I do it, it's like, yeah, I should do this more often. I mean, it would look a bit weird to do it all the time if everyone's just walking past watching you stroke a tree, but You know what I mean? It's sort of like it could be anything. It could be just like, when you were a kid, you'd be riding along on your bike and you'd stick your hand out so it could flick a bunch of fences along or a bunch of sticks along a fence or whatever. And yeah, there's these things that like in culture dictate what we're supposed to do, because it's like it's a norm. We're not supposed to act like children when we're adults, but yeah, we could definitely do with a bit more of it to feel like more alive, and just that we appreciate things.
Or sticking your hand out the window when you're driving, or your head and like the hair is in the wind is in your hair and stuff. Like,
yeah, well, you've got the perfect head, and it's a crime against nature for you to not do that. So,
all right, yes, now I will most definitely do that. So I like how you went to, on your first big travels, you went to 2 countries that were both mother language was English. So you went to England and then you went to Canada. So that's like a good start. Like, go to some countries that speak the same language. And that's get some comfort while, leaving home for the first time. And then, venture off into places like South America. But I've never been to Vancouver, so that's cool that you've been there. And I have seen pictures, and people talk about it, that it is a pretty magical nature place for sure. And there are a lot of places in Canada that are beautiful with nature. But you mentioned something about your old boss that had an effect on you, who was a quadriplegic or something.
Yeah, well, he used to be like a very good skater, and I think he was actually working for like some Disney show or something like that. And they were traveling, and there was an accident in the truck that he was traveling in, and he ended up becoming a quadriplegic. Well, I mean, he still has a little bit of like movement in his hands or his wrists, but not a lot of dexterity in the fingers. But yeah, otherwise, yeah, completely paralyzed. And yeah, he was actually able to get some advice from some guy who was a mentor from him, and ended up setting up his own herbal medicine shop. So he did like a kinesionics. He became like a certified kinesionics practitioner, where basically it's like diagnosing people with muscle testing. I don't know how much science is in it, but it's just like, someone who's actually able to have that happen to them, and not only stay positive, but like start their own business and continue to help people. So, I mean, you could be forgiven for being in that situation and then just like deciding, oh, life's not worth it, or whatever, and just being in the dumps, the whole time. I feel like if that happened to me, I don't know how I would deal with it, but he's a good example of like someone who's been able to take a really crappy situation and make the best of it.
Yeah, that's inspiring, because I have a few similar stories that come to mind when I hear that, where so many things, like when people say, oh, I could never learn an instrument, I'm not musically talented, like I hate hearing that. And because you literally can go on YouTube and you see people like who can play the guitar with like their toes, and like it's just wild. You're like, hey, if that guy's playing like a solo with his toes, like I'm sure you could learn the piano, like, or just you have to put in the time, and the practice, and the proper practice. But what really comes to mind with that story is, I had a friend who he was working on some sort of electrical pole, doing the wiring, and there was an explosion, and luckily he didn't die, but he actually had his arms got blown off, and he survived, and he had a family and kids. This is a crazy story, but he went through a period where like that's I don't know the whole backstory, but I know like his wife kind of left him, and like I'm sure they still talk and stuff, but it was pretty intense, right? And he went through like these suicidal times, but after he got over that hump, he started playing hockey again, which was crazy because he used to be really into hockey, and he had a really close friend who would help him dress and put on all his gear. And I actually went traveling with this guy. That's how I met him. And he came on this hockey trip with us. And he didn't use a hockey stick, obviously, because he doesn't have arms. But he had full equipment, and he would kick the puck and stuff. And he would block shots. And, like, just seeing this, like, is so inspiring. And I remember skating over to the bench. And I didn't notice it was him. And I just said to the person, I said, "Oh, can you grab me that water bottle?" And like he turned around, I was like, "Oh shit!" And then instead of him just like saying "sorry, man," he like walked over and like grabbed the water bottle with his teeth and like brought it over to me. And it's just like, it's exactly what you said, just not giving up and finding a way. Like there's always a way of some sort of happiness, and you said that too. There is different routes to happiness, which is. Yeah, that's all I'm going to say.
Yeah. It's sort of, it's an interesting theme because I certainly don't, I certainly understand where people are coming from, where they can't be happy because, usually it comes down, I don't really like it when people say money can't buy happiness. I know what they mean by that, and like you can be happy without it, but I mean, like you kind of need to sort out the bare essentials. Like you need to be able to pay the bills, and I guess you could be without like a lot of things, maybe even shelter, if you had like respect people in your community. But if you, I guess what I mean is money can buy you some opportunities where you don't have to worry about time or stress about sorting out the bare essentials and like the daily struggle of life, so that's why it can be hard. But yeah, man, like losing use of your legs or arms, or having your arms blown off, like I can't imagine what that must be like. So that's like definitely a great story, like for people to, if they think that like, cause yeah, you hear so many people complain about the most mundane details that like is so trivial to not even worry about. They're just like not focusing on the right things. Yeah, so it's all about where you direct your focus.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I mean, you can't base your entire life off that. Like, oh man, like there's always people who have less than you. Like, of course, like you can't be sad. Like, I understand that. Like, life isn't always that easy anyway. Like, just because you're not living in a developing nation that's they barely have water and stuff. But it is important to just be aware of everyone's ability. Anyone can do anything if you put your mind to it, and it's important to just be aware of those things. You've been to Colombia. I don't think we talked about that. So, but yeah, share some.
Yeah, man, Colombia's like really cool. Many beautiful and friendly people. I did couch surfing there for the first time, and one girl like let me stay in her living room for like 3 days or something like that. And I was in Bogota, which is sort of like a very busy city. And actually the first time I went up this sort of mountain, I think it's called Monserrate. There's a nice church up the top. Actually, it was my first day there, and I saw like 2 rainbows, because it was like dark clouds on one side, and sort of like you can see a nice amount of the sky, and it was like clouds, sunny, rainy. Yeah, it was really cool. The people are very friendly, but it's a big city too, so you probably meet nicer people in like rural towns and stuff. The buses are really, really packed, and you're sort of squashed in, because there's no subway system. And then Medellin is actually called the City of Spring, or City of Eternal Spring, because they have such nice weather all year round. Yeah, Medellin is known for having a lot of beautiful people, and it's quite modern now compared to what it used to be. It used to be one of the most dangerous cities in the world, but now it's actually like a lot safer. I recommend people go there as well. Check it out. I went to a cool place called Sand Hill, some sort of mountain trekking and abseiling and diving into pockets of water and climbing through caves. And I was with one American guy where we did that, and we saw some like black stuff, sort of like an ointment on the cave walls, and we thought it would be funny, I don't know why, to just like smear it under our eyes. And as we came out, we sort of like were speaking to the tour guide who was taking us around, and he told us it was batshit. So
Batshit.
that was fun. Yeah, we'd smeared batshit on our faces, but yeah, we could. Yeah, it wasn't far to find some water where we could swim and wash that off. But also went to Santa Marta, was cool. I saw a coconut drop from high up and nearly hit a woman in the head. And apparently, like, more people die from coconuts falling on their head than shark attacks. So there's a little bit of trivia for you.
This is great because, if people want to go to Colombia, like, there's a lot of places in South America where there's a stigma that they are really dangerous. And of course, there's dangerous parts in all parts of the world. And like, just like you said, in the States, there's probably like more dangerous towns or cities. And it's nice to hear that like you had such a great experience in Colombia.
Like Colombia in particular, like, I think maybe one of the reasons like they're just so friendly to tourists is because, they want to dispel that sort of reputation that is sort of like that it is dangerous there, and they want people to come and enjoy their country. So you can imagine, like, if Canada had a reputation for being something that it wasn't, you'd want to sort of like make people have a good time.
Yeah, exactly. And to dispel, the stigma. And man, you've been to a lot of places. So you're in Korea teaching English, and South Korea, because we haven't talked about that at all. So that's more up to date, Glen.
Yeah.
What's it like teaching to kids so you obviously don't speak any Korean, right? Or do you speak a little bit, or?
No, I only know, like, from being here, a few basic phrases, which, it's not enough to get by for a conversation. But, what's it like teaching kids who can't speak English? Oh, well, yeah, it's cool because, like I was saying before, you kind of rely a little bit on body language and sometimes acting like a bit of a goofball just so that they know that they're able to have a bit of fun. At times it's difficult or frustrating because, like, you're trying to get them to study as well, but they just want to play. And which I'm sure is like the same across the board in every part of the world when it comes to kids, because it's like the world is new to them, and their job is to just sort of learn about it and in whatever way that they can. And so I teach different age levels, like from kindergarten all the way through middle school up to elementary school up to middle school. So you've got the kindergarten kids who are just like super energetic. They're like almost uncontrollable sometimes, but it's kind of like, as frustrating it is, it's also like charming in a way, like to see them being like that. If I had a kid, I wouldn't let them like run around as much as like obviously some of their parents let these kids run about. But when they're having fun, it's hard to sort of like put a leash on them in that respect, like figure of speech. I don't actually have a leash that I put on the kids. And then you've got elementary school kids where, like, depending on what level or what age they are, some might be more interested in learning English than others. I mean, that's all the way through. But it's just interesting becoming a teacher and learning that, like, there's certain dynamics in a classroom that how to balance it. Like, you might treat one class differently than another because of like the personalities in it. It's all about trying to find the right balance and making sure that they're having a bit of a balance between like enjoying it and actually learning something at the same time. After a while, they'll sort of get it. But it's even after a year, there's a lot of kids where you're like, it's hard to see if they've actually learned anything. But but that doesn't stop you from sort of like having moments most of the time where you're enjoying the job. And I've enjoyed it enough to want to like travel somewhere else in Asia and do it again. So yeah, I'm actually a little bit interested in how you've gone like with your online teaching as well.
Yeah, it's such a cool job, your job and the one I do. For me, because it forces me to get up super early, and for you, if you were doing it in Australia, like you're closer to that time zone. But regardless, it's really cool. It's I feel the same way about. Sometimes I want to make sure that they're learning and not just like a lot of times we'll be going through the app and they'll just be reading it. Like if their English is really new, like some of the students I have are like really good in English, and those are the most fun because I can be funny and like they understand me. Whereas like someone and I don't speak any Chinese language, so when I have someone who's just learning, especially if they're really young, we end up kind of just working on pronunciation and things like that. And then I can still use my body language and stuff, but it's, I actually get not frustrated, but a little bit not sad either. I don't know what the right word is, but after every class, it's so weird. So I have a 25-minute class, and then like you say goodbye to them. You don't know if you'll ever see them again. Like they might, like I have a lot of reoccurring students, but like sometimes like I might not ever see that person again. And like you kind of feel bad because like you're getting like, I don't know why I feel bad, but like I'm getting paid to like teach them English, but like I just, I'd rather get to know them a little bit. Whereas like you have 25 minutes to put in this lesson where you want to get them to get the most out of it. And then you're kind of like, well, have a great day. Like, hopefully I see you again. Like, and sometimes it is difficult if they don't speak the best English because you can't really bond. It's more about the lesson. But I do really like when, like I said, sometimes they'll mention they play an instrument and I might just say, all right, can you play me a song or something and sing some English words or something. But I would definitely recommend it. I like how it gets me up early. It's not full time, and it's something I can do from my house or anywhere with Wi-Fi. So, I mean, you recommended it to me. So.
Yeah. I'll definitely look into it. Yeah. Thanks.
But anything else you want to say about Korea? Like, I like you wrote in your questionnaire that you wanted to, if you can, try and rub some positivity or creativity off on people from your travels and things you learned in life to people who maybe they feel like they only have so much wiggle room in their life. That's what I got from what you wrote, as in like certain jobs that they can pursue. There aren't as many. So like, yeah, if you want to explain that.
Well, like in Korea, there's a huge emphasis on like going to private academies and trying to get into or do well in high school and get into a good university and to get a good job, because like I guess that's just the culture. I don't know exactly like what the job opportunities are, but I have a feeling that they're only in a certain few sectors like IT or engineering or teaching in terms of the ones that are like reputable and available to get. You know, I'm sure that like people whip themselves up into a frenzy thinking that they have to get this score when maybe they don't. In a lot of cases, like they could probably find other avenues to finding success. But yeah, if they've been fed that their whole life and to a large extent it's true, then I can understand how they will be really worried and stressed as they are when they're entering high school and thinking I have to get a good grade, you know. So there's a lot of a lot of stress that the culture puts on them, and I say that like it's undue pressure, because like I think that they would actually have better results if they studied less. Like you look at a country like I think it's Iceland or Finland or something, they have like the least amount of like homework hours and study hours, but it's just because of the lifestyle and the quality of teaching. You know, it's conducive to helping them remember more and think more critically and producing more educated people. So yeah, they could probably take a leaf out of like a few other countries' book, but if I can sort of rub off in any way, it is a conservative sort of country, there's like, it's developed in a sort of Western way. Like there's a lot of technology and good infrastructure and plenty of good transport and everything. But a lot of especially the older generation's thinking is like still quite old fashioned, and a lot of that comes from like Confucianism. So I guess it's like if you want to come to Korea, it's a good mix of like a little bit of Western and sort of like what is traditionally Korean, but it's probably a little bit more conservative than what I expected it to be. I think like Japan, for example, might be a bit more tourist friendly, but yeah, still a great place to come and experience an interesting part of Asia. Yeah.
Cool. And so like, what's next for you? Cool. And interested in your next travels, like maybe it will be Africa because you haven't hit that continent yet.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I'll have to get there at some stage.
Yeah, you've gone everywhere else, right? So
I was saying, unfortunately, the last white rhino, I think, died in Sudan recently. It's a shame what like humanity is doing to like other species. That's probably too sad to, like, the last white rhino in the world died in Sudan like a few years ago, so there's no more. They're extinct now. So that's probably too sad of a note to end on.
That was recent. You just cut out there. That was recent.
Yeah. Well, that just goes to show you like some of the priorities, like the media, the way that it's churning out news, is that like that should be like massive news. That should be like if it was front page news in every newspaper, it would be the type of issue that people actually care about. But it's just sort of gets swept under the carpet, and not many people hear about it.
Yeah, definitely. Like so many things. Do you keep a journal on your travels? Do you ever keep a journal?
Oh man, that's so funny that you mentioned that, because I was talking about the same thing last night with a friend. We were both saying that we should like have like kept a journal, because you'd be able to just like recall every little single thing that happened. And obviously there's a lot of stuff that happened that in time will just fade away and won't be stuck in the memory bank. But I should do that, but I haven't actually got one. Like I did it for a bit when I was in South America, but yeah, unfortunately in Korea, at least now you've got like Instagram, and I probably use Facebook more than I should, but like you've got a sort of journal of photos, and that can sort of like jog your memory a bit. But there's certain conversations or people that you meet who would be great along the way to sort of like jot down, even for ideas for stories, but just so you could look back in years' time and like go, oh yeah, I remember that. That was awesome. But I haven't been doing it.
Yeah, and that's okay, because what's good is I wrote a journal on my trip for about half my trip, and it is really cool. The older they get, and looking back and reading and like where your head was at in that certain time period is really interesting. But the great thing is when you do video chat or talk on the phone with people who you met traveling, is they'll bring up stories from those past memories that you have forgotten, and then that might spark another thought. So that's cool. Like, you don't always need a journal, and you can just talk to your friends who you met traveling, and they can be your journal.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, just trying to set yourself up in a position where you can surround yourself with friends like in real life, like which I've got now, which is good. I'm obviously going to be leaving to go back to Australia, but I guess I'm pretty lucky to have 4 brothers as well, where we can chat anytime. And having those people around you where you can turn to, and if you're having a crap week, just to talk to each other. I guess women do that a lot better than guys. Like, traditionally, like, there's no reason why guys can't and probably should, just because, like, maybe there's this sort of stereotype that we're supposed to, like, hold everything in and just suck it up and, get on with the job. You can do that too, but you can also sort of get a bit of solace from talking to friends and just, like, talking about your problems. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I'll tell you a quick story before we call her quits. But this has been an amazing, amazing podcast. When I was in Portugal, I don't remember if I told you this, but I stayed in a self-sustainable community, and they had did I tell you this?
Portugal? No, I don't think so.
So I went for 3 days at this community that they purchased a bunch of land in the hills and surrounded by so much bush and trees, and they were living there and, like, having their own community and, like, had their own garden and stuff. It was really beautiful, and they would have once a week, they would have these meetings where everyone from the community, there was about like 15 or 20 people living there, and they'd get together and, they'd talk about any problems in the community, like solutions and things that weren't going well. And this girl mentioned that she wanted a sacred area for just the women to go, like, during their time of the month, like during their menstrual cycle, and, like, just to have female energy and stuff, and girls can, like, talk to each other. And then it was interesting, like, I thought that was a great idea, but another even interesting idea is one of the guys stood up and said, it would be cool to have an area for just the guys, like a man cave, and not only to, like, bond with the guys, but exactly what you're talking about, to actually, like, talk about your emotions as guys, because guys don't generally do that. And then he also said, like, to wrestle, like, get that inner warrior out. But it was cool to have, like, those two areas, and sometimes it's difficult to get a guy to open up a little bit, but you just have to get to know them better and ask the real questions. And again, back to the mundane stuff, like, just ask the real questions, like, how's life, like, any goals? Do you have any goals for the year, or, like, challenges? What are you facing in life, and what makes you happy? Like, it's interesting to figure out what makes people tick, right?
Yeah, like, behind it all, I think people just want to feel like they're being listened to and respected, and if you're able to do that for someone, it might sort of, like, be a jolt for them too, like a pleasant surprise, because it's like, oh, dude, the most conversation that people have in general is very mundane, because it's all, like, a social protocol kind of thing. It's like, hey, how you doing? Yeah, I'm great. It's like, they might be, but sort of, like, you got to let people know that it's okay to come out and just say that they're not having a great day, or find some time and space and the right people to work it out.
Yeah, and to be a good listener, like you said. Just before you go, do you want to leave something, like, that we missed, or just your what defines happiness for you? A quote? You had some good quotes. I like the abundance, the abundance of life. That's what I'm taking away from this. That was good. Take your time.
It's not easy for a lot of people. Like, there's a lot of, like, struggles just happening in the world, but some of the themes that we spoke about, I think, are important to remember. Just, like, that's one of them, like what you just mentioned, like, to try to get more in touch with nature, because, like, we probably forget that we sprung out of the earth, and, like, it's sort of, it's a bit artificial to be surrounding ourselves with all this, like, concrete and or, like, I mean, it just depends. Like, it's all about getting a balance, making sure that you've got the right amount of friends and purpose and responsibility, and you feel like your life's headed in sort of a positive direction, but also appreciating the moment, So yeah, look, I mean, it's not really for me to say what someone should do to be happy. You know, I can sort of like give hints on what I've done. Like, obviously, like diet and exercise are important. But I'm not happy all the time. There's still like a lot of stuff that I have to do. You know, to make sure, you know, I'm sort of challenging myself and improving. That's probably like the other way to that's important that you kind of touched on, is like you got to be doing new things and like challenging yourself. And it's more about just sort of like embracing learning, you know, having an open mind and like being pleasantly surprised by new information that you can then sort of incorporate into how you go and apply it like in the world. You know, it's sort of like not just about what you can read in a book, but how you can apply it so that it becomes wisdom and helpful to someone else, you know. So yeah, just try to be nice to people and help them when you can, and you know, do what you want to be happy, but just try not to hurt anyone else, you know. I mean, that's kind of like a very simplified thing of like what we've been talking about, a simplified way of saying it, but I guess it's a good starting point.
Yeah, that's a great way of putting all of that, of summarizing it. And I think that's important, like you said, to bring new things into your life. And then, you know, you can get overwhelmed by, there's so much in life. Like, Earth is a complex place, and there's so much to learn, and you can always learn and learn and learn, but it's important to know what resonates with you and how to use it in the correct way for you. And then as long as you keep challenging yourself and learning, you're going to be moving in the right direction and staying balanced, of course. Learning how to cook, I think that's a huge thing. So for me, learning how to cook, and you're just getting the right nutrients and you're staying balanced. And I feel like a lot of people I know don't really know how to cook, and including myself.
Well, I think if you're doing that, sort of like taking responsibility and also have like a respect to nature, and it sort of helps you to be balanced, you know, and to understand that it's not about like knowing the most stats and the most statistics. It's sort of more about you know, being able to be self-aware, you know, to be able to check yourself and realize that we're all part of like something bigger than ourselves. I think that would actually help people actually apply the knowledge that they get in a more sort of altruistic and helpful way. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I'll let you go, but it's difficult sometimes when, like, we could talk for hours, but when you do something great in life, or something great happens to you, and to remember, like, you know, you are just like everyone else, and like you're no more special or less special than anyone. You're all the same, and everyone just has their ups and downs. And like you said, sometimes you do really have bad days and stuff, but it's about being aware of that, being aware of, you know, I am having a off day, but I'm still good. Like, deep down, I'm still good, right? And that's important. Self-awareness is key.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, and we get like affected by our thoughts, and it's probably helpful to think of your thoughts more of like, you know, they come and go, and we don't want them to come and stay if they're going to negatively affect us. And you know, any thought would if that's the only one that you had. But you know, I heard someone say that you should see them more as like waves that are coming in, and you're like the body of ocean that holds those thoughts. So they'll come and go and crash, and then they'll recede back into the ocean. So, you know, just understand that, or it's a good sort of way to think of it in terms of like visual imagery to help think of your thoughts as just objects that sort of, you know, it doesn't have to be who you are. You're sort of bigger than that, you know. I don't know if that actually helps sort of manifest better thoughts for the future. There's ways that you can obviously do that, just by exercising the right discipline and yeah, just trying to find the right balance in life. But yeah, I'll leave it with that.
Perfect. Yeah, that's good. Okay, perfect. Thank you so much for taking the time. Like, that was a pretty long talk. Appreciate you taking the time out of your day to share that. And I feel like a closer connection now too, which is cool. So, because I haven't seen you in over 2 years, I guess. So, I will let you get to your day, and we'll be in touch for sure. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're very welcome. I can't believe it's been that long. But yeah, round 2 coming up.
Yeah, sounds good. All right, Glenn, enjoy your mountain day.
Thanks, man. You too.
Yeah, cheers.
And there you have it. Everybody back on the bus, please. Time to head home. Thank you so much for listening, and hopefully we were able to add some culture and creativity to your life. Next episode, we buy a Eurail pass and tour across Europe while enjoying the ancient lands of Turkey and drive on the wild side in India. If these stories and energy are resonating with you, give it a follow or subscribe, and please feel welcome to leave a comment or review. You can find the audio version on Apple Podcasts or the video version on our YouTube channel. Thank you for joining us. I'm Jeffosaurus Rex, and remember, stay curious, vicarious.